Hello, and thank you for joining us for our webinar Wednesday today. My name is Sharon, and I'm with SIPA, your Colorado Government Authority, helping you get more information and services online and offering Colorado government's grant funding. In today's webinar, John Brooks and Sylvia Gwynn will be diving into City as a Platform technology and how it relates to digital transformation and resident engagement, among many other things. Before we get started, please go ahead and turn on captioning if you need or desire, and note that during this webinar you are muted. If you have any questions or would like to communicate with the presenters at any point during the webinar, please use the chat or the Q&A function. We will unmute folks at the end for any remaining questions when you raise your hands. We'll also have a poll question for you to answer during the presentation, or actually a few poll questions, and a post-webinar survey, and we hope you'll provide your feedback. Please join me in welcoming John and Sylvia. Thank you both for sharing your time and expertise. We really do appreciate it. Also on the call is SIPA's Sales and Marketing Director, Beth Justice, and Customer Success Director, Twain Tucker, if you have any questions for us. Thank you all again for joining us today. And with that, I will turn it over to our guests.
Great. Thank you. Assuming everybody can hear me okay. Just wanted to double check. Thumbs up is always a good sign in the right direction. So thanks for joining everybody. My name is John Brooks. I'm the CEO for the Americas for Globetom. We are an organization that is about 22 years old now. We've been in the business of technology and integration technologies now for quite some time, working primarily in commercial industries around telecommunications and aviation and our governments. We have spent a great deal of time designing and creating solutions that have moved closer and closer into serving smart city needs as we watch digital transformation leave not only the commercial and the private sector, but get more and more into the public sector environments. So what we wanted to take you through today was City as a Platform technology that Globetom has that we use for a variety of use cases. In this specific environment, we're talking about digital resident engagements. So with that, I will carry us a little further into the presentation here. And the first thing I wanted to do was to briefly explain what City as a Platform technology is. And the City as a Platform is really designed to create an integrated foundation to support all your digital initiatives. And this is something that we see happening quite extensively throughout the industry right now with smart governments, is that there's more and more digital transformation, more and more technology, more and more data, more and more systems and processes and functions and so on that are being exposed to all of these different departments within not just state governments, but also within city, town, county, local entity environments as well. So the City as a Platform technology really becomes a key component in driving and future-proofing much of those different technologies as we go forward. So City as a Platform technology, which is our brand name, is Raptor. So our Raptor technology is a component-based architecture. And I'll spend some more time on this here in a little while, but give you an idea of some of the different use cases that are available here. Certainly, there's things like smart contracts and citizen rewarding and secure onboarding, secure data management, integration to different departments and all the different civic systems out there. At our core, we are an integration platform. So we have the capability within an integration platform to go through and tie to virtually any system out there. Raptor comes with a very extensive library of almost 6 APIs, a series of package integration processes for connecting to civic systems, for instance. But I think something else that becomes actually a very important concept to keep in mind here is that City as a Platform works on a digital integration hub technology, which gets away from point-to-point technologies. And as we've seen digitalization take place within local governments, there's been a lot of point-to-point integration. So System A tying to System C and System C tying to System F and so on. The problem with those integrations is that they're all very, very limited. In a point-to-hub philosophy, what you're doing now is you're integrating a system one time, and from there, we can integrate it to any use cases going further down the road, whether that be to data systems, other systems of record, and so on. That becomes very, very key for future-proofing cities and counties and towns as they move forward. So let's dive a little bit in a little more detail around what a digitally connected resident is all about. And when we talk about a digitally connected resident, There's a few concepts to keep in mind here, and one of them is that as we've all experienced digital transformation over time, uh, smart technology has infiltrated virtually every corner and nook and cranny of our lives. And what that means is we are now connected continuously to the world around us. We have instant information access. We have instant access to products and services, and DoorDash to Amazon to anything at all. We have instant access to all of those things now. That expectation has become intrinsic within our society to where it's an expectation not just within the private sector, but also within the government sector. So imagine now as a citizen, when you apply for something at the rec center and apply for a class, or you want to rent out a facility, or you want to apply for a permit, 4 weeks is no longer an acceptable conversation to have for a resolution and completion of that transaction. Now it's 4 minutes. People do not want to wait any longer. And so that expectation of being digitally enabled is now filtered into the government sector as well. And digitally connected residents are right at the forefront of that conversation. So just to build on that a little bit further, the data consumer map here is growing and very, very elaborate. So looking at something like this today, you look at all the different departments, all the different facets of a particular local government or even a state government. At the endpoints of all of these different bubbles out here are hundreds or potentially thousands of consumers beyond that. So this map is limited, believe it or not, in scope right now from what it actually is. This is all we could fit on the slide. In reality, this has endpoints that number in the thousands or even tens of thousands. So the need for integrations, the need for digital management and data management, those needs are growing very, very rapidly. And that shows no sign of slowing down. And the more systems and the more processes and functions that local governments add into that portfolio, the worse this map becomes potentially, especially if you're trying to access within that. So one of the things we wanted to focus on today was an initial program that we did here in Colorado for the city of Longmont. And they worked with us through the Colorado Smart City Alliance, through some various contacts there to get to a point where they said, look, we want to pursue a digital resident engagement program. And a lot of credit to Longmont. They are a very forward-looking and very forward-thinking entity. They really have thought this through, have seen some of the challenges coming through digital transformation, and have really started to position themselves and their anything from their budgets to their strategies to address those concerns, try and make sure that they don't leave anybody behind. How do they make sure that they can bring everybody along with them as this evolution takes place? So one of the conversations that we had with them, they described to us the dilemmas that they were facing, and both internally and also externally with their user environment. And the external dilemma is really the resident dilemma, is that as jurisdictions digitalize, they are creating a maze of new platforms and products and services. Now, that gets a little counterintuitive, because you think, I'm going to add this brand new product into my department, and that's going to make the users externally, it's going to make their lives great. They're going to love it. Well, what ends up happening is that you and every other department has added systems. So now we've created this maze of products and platforms and services out there for a user to have to try and navigate. And each one of them is best of breed. Each one of them has their own separate interfaces. Each one has their own separate onboarding. And what we've ended up doing is we've created a great deal of confusion and a growing amount of confusion for our customers, for our endpoint customers. And we're talking about residents today, but that translates into businesses, that translates into visitors, anybody who is externally coming in and wanting to interact and do transactions with your local government. We're making their lives worse, effectively. So how do we cut through that? How do we start to make that a much more simplified thing? So that brings us to our first poll question. So Sharon, that's a key for you there. And really the first poll question here is really focus on, how many systems do your residents really need to interact with to obtain information, to request services, to pay fees, to do whatever the case may be. So as we progress through this here, we'll wait for responses, but we'll continue on forward here with this. And actually, there we go. So the poll question, it froze my screen for a second there, but I was able to figure it through, which is, as a technology company, it's good that we can solve these problems. So
And here's our results. Looks
Yeah.
like 29% say 2 to 4, 29% say 5 to 6, and 43% say 7 or more.
Interesting. That's and not uncommon from what we've seen, and that is very much oftentimes a direct correlation to the size of the government entity that we're working with. But as we continue to go through this, one of the other challenges that Longmont brought forward that we also found very interesting was that not every department has a system. Not every department has a platform or a data structure that they work within or anything of that environment. So it's not just a question of bringing the citizens along. Oftentimes it's a question of us needing to bring along departments within a local government that may not have technology to integrate, but they have needs to be part of that digital work. So how do we meet those needs? And we'll talk about that here shortly. So the other side of the coin on this, we talked about the resident side and some of the challenges they were facing, but let's talk about the city side as well. Each department, as we mentioned, has their own specialized goals, their own specialized areas of emphasis. They have gone through or are going through or are considering some sort of digitalization needs. And the idea with these is that they don't want to make things worse. They don't want to double enter things, for instance, something we faced with Longmont. Longmont was having to enter potentially multiple times the same request that came in from a particular resident for a service or a complaint or whatever the situation was. And that was subject to having to be entered more than once across different platforms, across different departments. How do we get rid of that? How do we eliminate that need? And then so that was also part of our task at hand within this. But at the same time, it was important not to alter anything that existed. So we don't want to mess with anything that's already out there and make lives worse. Their processes needed to, if nothing else, stay exactly the same or improve and streamline. They could not get worse, which meant we needed to make sure that when we integrated, that the residents had an access point that was transparent to the back end, so that those departments worked business as usual. And we'll talk more about that here in a few moments, but nothing changed. They had the opportunity to work within their own platforms, do their own updates, their own status changes, maintain their own products and so on. None of that had to change. And there was also the cross-departmental information flow as well, which is very easily supported. So when you think a little bit about what citizens need to access, and then those of you that are local governments that are with us today already know the answers to this, but service requests, permits, inspections, any types of requests for service, any products out there. And this is something that is a little bit of a departure from a lot of local government thought processes, is like this idea or this concept of products. And when you think about products, a product could be a class at the rec center. It could be a permit. It could be a service, could be an inspection, but all of those things are cataloged entities. And this is something that the private sector does very, very well. The government sector typically does not do very well, is cataloging all of these things. So that's something else we brought into this as well. But also citizens need access to, and residents need access to information. They need access to making transactions and payments and so on. So when you think about the diversity of the services being offered by a given city or town or county, between utilities and as I mentioned before, Longmont is one of the more forward-thinking cities that are out there. Not just in what they're planning for, but also in what they're offering today. Longmont is a broadband service provider. They have their water wastewater utilities. They have emergency services. They have a very wide array of services that are continuing to grow for their constituents right now. So how do we make sure that we keep that in mind as we build something that's going to be extensible for the future? And really, what that also boils down to is how does that correlate with what we've been researching across the 19,000 cities, counties, and towns within the United States, and these several hundred thousand, actually several million that exist worldwide that Globetom has spent time, interacting with and researching. And we didn't interact with all million of them, but quite a few of them. So it really boils down to complex engagements that are a fact of life today in public engagements in general. So it's navigating multiple access points to get to all of these things. This is a representation of what we are generally finding within an existing local government. So with this top bar, you've got your public users out there. So your residents, businesses, visitors, and so on. It's very, very common for us to come into a civic environment and find that they've got one web page that everybody gets to that they can go from. That's common. That's not what we're talking about here. Because as soon as they get off of one click off of that web page, they go to System 1 with Portal 1. They go to System 2 with Portal 2. They go to System 3 with Portal 3. Some of those systems are anonymous journeys. Some of those systems require onboarding. All of those systems that require onboarding do not have the same protocols for passwords. They do not have the same protocols for usernames. They do not have single sign-on across all of those different portals. So once we get past that one unified web page, if there is one, they still have this maze down below that they need to navigate, and that becomes very difficult and very cumbersome. So, and again, with all these departments, each one of these departments maintains their own system. Potentially, some of them have no system at all. They maintain their own catalogs of products and services. And so this is the map of what we have typically found. So this leads us to poll question number 2, which is, due to the increasing number of digital journeys that make overall city or county interactions easier or more complex. Are we making them easier or more complex for your residents in general, but especially those who are elderly or digitally challenged? I've got certainly relatives, and many of us do, that are becoming older, and as they become older, oftentimes technology is becoming more difficult for them to navigate. And then there's also people that just don't have access to technology to the extent they need to have. So are we making their journeys more complex right now, or are we making them easier? And that would be the next poll question here. And keep in mind that when we talk about that we're pretty evenly split, when we talk about these journeys, it's not just a question of putting a system to make life easier. That's great for System 1, but as we talked about towards the beginning, when you put in 7 systems or 10 systems or 15 systems, now all of a sudden that digital journey becomes much more complex to have. So
That was really interesting, seeing the even split of 33% across the board there.
yeah, that was. It's I'll tell you that most of the time the answer to that question is, yeah, we're making life more complex. But again, that's also a conversation around size, and it's also a conversation around the digital maturity of that particular organization. As you go from the states and you get into smaller and smaller down into local governments, budgets and resource skill set availability and so on make a big difference in that digital divide that they have already started to cross or have not yet completed the crossing of yet. So there's certainly something to take into consideration there on how that actually works out. So when we created the pilot program within the city of Longmont, we needed to be able to seamlessly communicate with multiple city platforms. We needed to create digital engagements that provided a very simplified user experience. We didn't have any desired and we had actually direct instructions to not impact any departmental processes or systems. And we also needed to create an extensible foundation so that the pilot started off, the initial project had several systems involved, but it wasn't everything. So we needed to make sure that it was going to be extensible to incorporate more systems, more data, more processes as time, as budget and so on allowed for those departments to incorporate and be onboarded into that. But one of the other things that was actually interesting in this too is that ability to share with partner jurisdictions became very interesting. And those of you that work a lot with the HRMS, a lot of the human resource management systems out there, that understand that between the state and the county and the towns or cities, think of all the assistance that you offer to your constituents out there. That it may be housing assistance, it may be employment assistance, it may be food or medical or other types of education assistance. Some of those vehicles are actually duplicated at different levels of government. If there's no communication and partner sharing across those jurisdictions, you have no idea. And so you've got a finite amount of resources to work with, and you're duplicating services across, say, 3% of those. That's 3% more that you could be allocating within your budget to support even more services within your environment that you don't know about because you don't have that partner jurisdiction sharing capability and synchronization capability. Cities, a platform gives you that. It allows you to securely share that data across. So what the final solution in Longmont looked like was the first phase of what's basically a digitally integrated public ecosystem. So using the Civic platform PIPs that we have, which are that package integration processes, and our API catalog library, our library catalogs that we have out there, we were able to create a much richer journey and a much easier environment for people to navigate and work within. So if you look at this particular diagram, we took them through a single portal. And in this particular case, we actually constructed the portal for Longmont. We were using the same technology they were. We're happy either way. As far as portal creation goes, most governments that we work with actually have their own style sheets, their own developers and designers on how they want their portals to look. We don't need to build your portal for you. We can give you all the components to embed in your existing ones as needed as well to make sure that that portal front end matches exactly how the workflows that you have already established within your environment. But in this case, we built up that unified portal for the city, and then we brought in different APIs that drove the conversation. So we brought in our PIPs to connect to the city civic systems that we were talking with. But then we also brought in APIs to introduce this notion of cataloging, first of all. And in this case, we brought in catalogs for services that was, again, completely API driven. That allowed us to synchronize with those connected systems and download and continue to update their catalog entries. So what that means is if you've got products and services and so on out there, we integrate that and we continually retrieve that information and update that master catalog so that the departments can maintain all of their own information as business as usual. But we will continue to pull that in and promote that up into a unified environment that now becomes populated for the citizens in that one place. That's API driven. The second set of APIs that we introduced was also for service orders as well. We have service order APIs out there that we also cataloged and housed for the city for all different departments. So while a request would go to a department system, we also maintain the master store. And then the third set of APIs that we generated on this were also for maintaining those onboarded users. And we built a master store of all those onboarded users. And why that became important is because when you're an onboarded user, now you've got different activities that you may conduct business with. This becomes equally as important, or actually more important, for businesses interacting with the city because they may have many different transactions taking place. And this gives you, by having that catalog of onboarded users, registered users in there, we can now keep track of everything that they're doing and let them log in at any given time and see the status of any of those particular transactions that are taking place. So I'll show you that here in just a moment as well. But within that unified environment now, they could come down into the Raptor environment, which they don't see. We're completely behind the scenes on all of this. And Raptor is now engaged with all of those downstream systems that we're engaged with. We didn't have all of these systems in the first rendition, but we had considerable one, actually most of them. And that integration now kept those kept those processes live and in real time. So let's take a quick look at what that actual portal looked like. And remember, we talked about some of the requirements were to have both capability for an onboarded journey and capability for an anonymous journey. So as if a resident wants to file a noise complaint, they may not want to be identified. They don't want their neighbors to know that they're the ones that complained. That's certainly not uncommon. But if they have a trash receptacle that on city provided trash services and the trash bin is broken, kind of need to know who they are. So we can actually know where to go to replace it, for instance. So some journeys are onboarded, some are anonymous. If they're onboarded, we provided an onboarded registration screen here for them that allowed them to come up as either a business or a resident and create their password and so on. And as I've mentioned before, we maintain a party management API that keeps a master store of all that. A future extension for this is going to be a party role management API that we would actually also deploy in later phases that allows users to have different levels of permissions. So imagine a business that has different users that are transacting with the city, but there may be a business master user that needs to be able to see all the transactions they're doing, but there may be subsequent users within that business that only need to see the stuff that they're working on. So those are party role managements, and we have that full capability within the platform to drive that. So, so they have this initial sign up screen. When they're a registered user, they can go in and see everything that they've done, all their open orders, all their open service requests, all their transactions, all their payments, everything they've done with the city will show up in one place. Even if it's touching 20 systems on the back end, they don't know and they don't need to know. So they're just from one portal being able to handle all of this. So when they're going in and doing service requests, for instance, we'll take you through some of those pages. The service catalog API, as I mentioned before, is continuously polling those various department systems saying, do you have something new that you're offering out there? What's its price? What are its parameters? How does it work? We'll pull all of that into a master catalog and make that available. That is then promoted up to these screens. And from there, the residents can select what they want to work with. Now, in this case, we had several different types of requests between enforcement services and parks and trails and streets and sidewalks and traffics. And also trash services. So we had a variety of different systems and processes that we were touching here within that. And again, we can extend this to any number of services. This was just the initial rollout that we put together. So gives you kind of a quick idea. And again, look and feel was specific to what Longmont was looking for, but completely within the discretion of what your individual government style sheets are going to look like that we will conform to. Now, when they entered a service request, for the initial rollout, we actually sat just outside their firewall and API'd in back and forth to some of their systems. So there was a variety of reasons for that initial rollout. But what that meant is we didn't tie directly to their GIS system on a real-time basis. But we did tie to it on a basis that was just a couple of seconds. So it wasn't as real time as we would have been in the second stage rollout. But what that meant is we use Google for the address selection. So if you want to file a service request for a sidewalk that has a fractured concrete, for instance, you can go through and actually select the address by typing it in directly, or you could select it off of Google Maps. So once that address is selected, then what Raptor then does is it immediately APIs back over into the Longmont GIS system for two reasons. Number one, to validate that the address is on their system, and number two, to validate that it's actually within the city. So many of us that live in unincorporated areas of a county, we still have a city listed on our address. We're not in a city, so it doesn't make any difference. It makes us look like we're part of Longmont, but we're actually just outside of Longmont in Boulder County somewhere, for instance. So in that case, when they put in the address, we immediately go out and within a couple of seconds, we get a response back from GIS. In this case, it came back and said, hey, you're in an apartment building. Which one are you? And you can go through and actually select which specific one you are. But that is, had that not been a city address, Raptor would have immediately notified that resident that, hey, you're not in the city, and we would provide a link to go over and talk to the county about that same issue. So, so the intelligence is already built in there for that. Later phases of this have the ability to also introduce artificial intelligence as well. So journey predictions, for instance. If you're a resident that is just loving the rec center and you're going there all the time year round, you've got your kids in hockey, you've got you got yourself signed up for swim classes or whatever's going on. You've got a bunch of things going on. We'll start to recognize that pretty quickly. And in later releases of this, we can go through and put in artificial intelligence to actually journey predict. And so when you first log in, we can say, oh, hey, John's back. John, do you want to go to the rec center again, or would you rather start somewhere else today? To simplify the journey even more. They still have all the access to everything they had before, but now we can actually tailor that journey based on that particular resident's persona that we've identified. So anyway, this is how the service requests look, but this gives you a few ideas of what these screens look like. But I think one of the takeaways here, if we go back to this picture of the smart city platform within Raptor, this component architecture, there's a lot here. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the use cases with this here in just a moment. But what's important to mention here is that for that rollout in Longmont, this is all we used. So we only needed 4 components. And that's one of the keys with the city as a platform strategy in general, whether it's Raptor or some other city as a platform technology out there, that you and deploy what you need. You don't deploy the whole thing. That there's no point in doing that. If you're not going to deploy omni-channel communications that exist within Raptor, then don't deploy it. There's no reason to pay for something like that if you're not going to have it lit up. So that's one of the keys with component-based architectures, is make sure that you're putting in what's going to meet your use cases, but also offer extensibility to all this other set of services that later on you may want to introduce. So when we talk about future-proofing local governments, as we start to wind down here a little bit, what I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on is to give you an idea of a city as a platform. The myriad of use cases, the wide array of use cases that are available is always growing. This is a subset of some of those right now. And keep in mind that PIPs, those package integration processes, are great for tying systems into this digital integration hub. That the APIs are what actually drive and enable a lot of these use cases to take place. So connectors are one thing, but it's really what APIs do you have to actually drive functionality that lead to this digitally integrated public ecosystem and really light it up and make it a reality. So some of the use cases to talk about here, for instance, creating a 360-degree master view of information. I'm sure this is not a problem with anybody that's on the call today, but I can't tell you how many jurisdictions we've met with who their departments do not agree with each other on information. They all have different views of a business, a parcel of land, a resident. They all have different views. Sometimes that resident lives at another address. Sometimes they're registered to vote. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're deceased. Other departments think they're alive. We're all over the map on that. And so one of the things that a Raptor environment does is it goes to all of those integrated environments and actually performs what we call master data management. So we create a 360-degree view of that entity. And once we create that view, if there's any discrepancies, we can actually quarantine that information out. And either if there's rules to automatically correct that on those downstream systems, Raptor will go to those downstream systems and actually make those corrections. Or if the rules say, no, eyes on this first, and we put that out into a case, we drop it on somebody's mailbox and say, look at this and tell us which way this should be. And then we can go make the correction, and they can make the correction manually. So master data management is crucial, especially when you're dealing with elected leadership that is looking at information that you have told them is dead on accurate. And then somebody else gets up and says, not so much. So how do we avoid that? And that's what this does. Permitting and request process automation. We can take these processes and drive them from department to department to department to actually streamline and automate workflows. There's a lot more coming in our capabilities on that over the next year or so as well, because we're seeing a great deal more interest in those types of functions. Smart contract management. Raptor contains, and it was on the previous diagram, but we'll spend a little time talking about this. We have a distributed ledger technology on board. So essentially blockchain capabilities on board. And when you think about smart contracts, this is something that's becoming an interesting capability that local governments are just starting to leverage. Imagine a contract from RFP through procurement, through initiation of the contract, through completion of milestones, through closure and completion of and acceptance of the contract. We can automate that entire process through a distributed ledger or through a smart contract environment and actually drive that entire process through automation so that somebody in procurement's not having to track thousands of, or, a couple thousand contracts out there, all in different phases of activity. This can all be tracked digitally through the entire process. We can tell you when things are due for milestones. We can tell you if criteria has been met. Then also sustainability programs and incentives. This one, when Globetom started doing some work in smart cities, one of the first things we did, especially over in Europe, was we worked with the Telemanagement Forum, which is one of the initial groups and industry bodies that started really diving into smart cities, 8-10 years ago, from a technology perspective, because telecom had the networks. So smart city technology that was all digitally driven, nobody had a network but telecom. So that's really where a lot of this originated from. One of the first areas that we worked in was around loyalty. And, how do we take loyalty programs that have been used all over private industry? I mean, you can't walk into a restaurant without signing up for a loyalty program anymore, much less the airlines. But how do you now take that into the civic environment, into the local government environment? And there's been a huge driver within the governments, more so than in other entities, to drive sustainability. And one of the things that we thought about is let's take loyalty and sustainability, put them together and get to this incentives program. And then let's figure out a way that we can cast a net to not just engage our residents, but also engage our local businesses as well with those incentives. So imagine renting an e-scooter in downtown Denver, and as soon as you rent that scooter and check that back in, you immediately have a 10% discount at one of the bars down in Lodo for appetizers, So those are the types of things you've incentivized a behavior. And what we've discovered is when you cast the net on sustainability, you're going to get 10 to 20% of the population interested right away because they're all on board with that kind of thing. I grew up in Boulder. We're all about that stuff. So, that's great. What about the other 80%? How do you get them? That's where the incentives come into play. When we can start incentivizing behavior, we can cast a wider net and get better results out of our incentives program, out of our sustainability programs. So that's built in within Raptor. We have an entire loyalty component that actually works off of crypto coin purses and so on that can distribute and work with those concepts. And we take that directly into connected and directed tourism use cases here as well, where we can now take tourists that are going to Estes Park, engage a bunch of local businesses in Estes Park to provide incentives for people to come in and learn what they do, purchase from them. Now we've increased the local government and the local population share of wallet for their connected visitors. And we've guided and directed them on places to go and things to do and things to engage in. Those are all revenue generators for not just the local government, but also for those businesses around the area. So then we also have this concept of secure multi-agency tenancy. One of the things that always has stood out, and we had this conversation, Sharon and I just had this conversation yesterday. How do we leave nobody behind? How do we make sure that this is not just for the larger cities within the state of Colorado? How do we make sure that we get everybody included? Raptor is built on a web or on a cloud-based environment, and it is multi-tenancy supporting out of the box. So imagine a single county with 4 towns in it. None of them by themselves really contain enough critical mass to get to where they really want to be to take advantage of something like this. But collectively, 2, 3, 4 of them or all of them together do. So now they can have the exact same capabilities that we can light up for Colorado Springs or Pueblo or Denver or Grand Junction. We can do the exact same things out in Cheyenne Wells. So all of that capability now becomes very easily achievable for any size government within the state. So digital resident engagements, we've already talked about a little bit, but let's talk about neighborhood and omni-channel communications capabilities. it's becoming increasingly important, and we're seeing, you know, again, some of the forward thinking in Longmont, they're actually putting together some very extensive neighborhood portaling capabilities out there. How do we get our communities, all the individual communities and neighborhoods within our city, our town, our county? How do we get them more engaged? How do we communicate better with them proactively? Raptor has an omni-channel communications component within it as well that communicates over text. It communicates over social media. It does all these different types of communication channels that allow you to put together groups. There are bi-directional communications, so you can receive responses from them as well. So if you want to send information on a parade that's going to be shutting down a street in a community, you don't need to blast that out to the whole city. You can just send it to that community. Those communications capabilities are built in. Also, secure data monetization. With the introduction of IoT especially, what we found is that cities and counties and towns are becoming experienced with big data. And as a result of that, what they also have available to them is a new revenue source, potentially, because there's a lot of entities out there that actually would subscribe to and potentially purchase information. So as a result of that, we, as within Raptor, we can set up a portal that will take secure information that is not PII sensitive and make that subscribable to other entities. So somebody wants to get a hold of air quality data or traffic data or other information that you deem is acceptable to make generally available to the public. And some of that data can be monetized. And Raptor can not only take that data and make it available, Raptor can also take payments for that as well. There's also the cross-agency data sharing. That one, you know, we talked about briefly as well for jurisdictions, multi-jurisdiction data sharing. A little bit about payment processing. We do work with PCI compliant and Stripe certified capabilities to work with payment providers. So we can actually work with payment processing there as well. IoT data management, we talked about Raptor being at its core, backed by an enterprise grade integration, digital integration hub. We have a variety of connectors on board, including MQTT protocols, which are what are very commonly used in IoT, for instance. So we can actually manage the IoT data at the source of the sensor or at the destination system that data is being downloaded to. We can work with either one. It goes hand in hand with big data management. Coming out of the commercial environment, especially in telecommunications, Raptor has grown up in an environment where we've worked with billions of records, hundreds of billions of records per day. So big data is something that we do out of the box quite well. And certainly we are looking forward to the growth of data that's showing up in civic environments, to being able to plug that directly in. So no need to go out and buy a data warehouse, really, if you don't need to. You don't need to go out and spend a lot of money on Databricks, which can be an exorbitant amount of money. Raptor has big data management built in, and those capabilities are there. Performance reporting and analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning. AI and ML is a continually evolving conversation for us. Every week, our engineers are adding more AI and ML capabilities within our existing reporting, dashboarding, analytics capabilities that already exist within the platform. Plus, we also work with several AI partners and Gen AI partners, including NVIDIA, including Prion, including some other big names out there. So that conversation for adding more bot technology and so on, we are happy to have that with you because all of that is coming online or is already online today. And of course, the default capabilities of system data and application integration and that cross-departmental sync. I know I spent a little time on this slide here. I won't put you through too much more of it, but this gets you kind of an idea of those capabilities, those use cases that are out there. But again, go back to that previous slide where we said, just light up what you need. You know, for the different use cases, just bring to bear the components that are necessary. And that is the key differentiator with a component-based architecture. This, as we start to get towards the end here, I wanted to give you also a quick idea of some of the APIs that we have available out there that are both externally facing and also departmental and also partner facing APIs. Again, we've got almost 6 of them out there. This is a sampling of some of them out there. Our PIP list is also growing pretty much with every engagement. So this gives you kind of an idea of the breadth of capabilities that are available out there. And with that, I get to our third polling question, our final polling question, and really it's the question is, would it be beneficial to simplify how your residents can engage with your local government while not impacting each department or their systems? Is there some benefit in that? So this question is admittedly one of the more leading questions, because it's the answer here pretty much is going to be yes. So there may be some outliers out there that say no, and part of that's because digitally you may have already done a lot of that maturity work, and you just don't need to add more to it. But in the majority of cases that we see out there, there's so much complexity being added that there is some value in how we can simplify that.
And interestingly, we got 40% saying not sure. So some further conversations to be had.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's not uncommon, actually, to see a lot of the not sures, because this is something that with digital transformation in general, what a lot of local governments are what they're encountering right now is they're still discovering what questions to ask. So as the transformations are taking place, as more technology is rolling out there, as more use cases that we didn't envision before are now starting to arrive, and we have to figure out how to solve them, it's knowing what questions to ask to simplify things and to make lives better and to prepare going forward. That's not always an easy question. So I certainly understand some of the not sures in that as well. So as we start to wrap up here real quick, what are the paths forward? And then if you embarked on a digital resident engagement program, where do you go after that? And there's a lot of answers to that. Here's some examples of potentially where to go. And one of them is integrating all of your other departments. So, and the key to that first bullet is start small. Do not take a big bite on your first endeavor into any of these technologies, whether it be a city as a platform technology like Raptor or anything else. Start small and keep your success chances extremely high as a result of that. And then over time, integrate all those additional systems and processes as you need to. For those departments that don't have digital capabilities, let's sit down and figure out what types of services and products that they have today are potentially things that can be more digitally enabled, but more importantly, or just as importantly, is where do they want to go in the future? And that's a conversation that needs some guidance oftentimes, because they may not know where they want to go in the future. So we need to collectively come up with ideas and figure out which ones are feasible and which ones meet the goals of not only the leadership in that government entity, but also for that department. So, but extending digital systems into these systems of these departments that don't have any, not difficult at all. Providing analytics on residents and community engagements, synchronizing information across departments, digitizing workflows across departments so that now departments can not have to take a file folder and keep dropping it in this inbox and that inbox and that inbox. We can actually digitalize those services, and that gives us a logging trail. That gives us a paper trail, if you will, a digital paper trail of where things have gone. And also, we can then look to expanding engagements to incorporate other partners under that single umbrella. So going back to that multi-tenancy use case, and going back to use cases of just partners in general, there's a lot of use cases out there that are not limited to a department or a jurisdiction. They do actually cross jurisdictions. And that's something that we want to be very cognizant of going forward, is that technology and communications technology and so on has made the world a lot smaller. Same thing's happening in governments, to where governments cannot sit in isolated islands from each other as much as they had in the past, because there's too much information sharing, there's too much collaboration of services, there's too much need to share resources, that now the ability to collaborate and work with your cross-jurisdictional partners, even to things like loyalty programs. if I do something up in downtown Denver, I kind of want to be able to, I want to spend my credits up on the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, how do we enable those cross-jurisdictional activities? And that's something that a city is a platform technology. When you start to think along those foundational processes, then that becomes a much, much more realistic goal to go after. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your time. And I think we've left some time for some questions here at the end. So Sharon, do you want to navigate some of those, or
We
I'll answer?
have, so we've got our chat and Q&A open, or if you want to raise your hand, I will get you unmuted and you can ask away verbally. I know I asked this question of you earlier and we don't want to get into too many specifics, but is this something that's affordable for those smaller counties and cities? Because, this is amazing to be able to say, I live in Lakewood. If Lakewood and Jeffco had that communication that we could work, together and across platforms and have single sign-on even, that would be fantastic. And can something like that happen in a way that they could do?
Absolutely. That actually is a fundamental capability. And that's where being an API-led technology really comes into play, because now we can take single sign-on, for instance, and promote that across systems across both jurisdictions potentially. That multi-tenancy capability means we could put one instance and be able to drive Lakewood and potentially Littleton and so on. Multiple jurisdictions could all work, within, Golden and Wheat Ridge. Everybody else could all tie in with Jeffco and be on the exact same environment. No, by the way, Bailey's on it too, So there's a lot of cross-pollination that takes place there that is very easy to do. And from an affordability standpoint, what really is an interesting conversation around affordability is around the norms that people have subscribed to. And what I mean by that is they think that, well, if you're a really small area, you just don't have a lot of money. What the small areas have access to more easily oftentimes is grant funding. And that becomes a good viable alternative, but also you scale to what you need. So you don't need to spend an awful lot of money to be able to get into something like this if you're a small community, because your volumes are small, therefore your needs are small. So this is scaled based off of components and off of volume. So this is not something that if you're driving 1 million requests a year, that we were looking at some statistics in Chicago a little while ago, and a couple of years back, and the complaints that they took in and around Chicago O'Hare Airport and Midway Airport were in the like 50 to 60,000 a month complaints, just because everybody hates the noise. You live there. The airports have been there for a while. I don't know what they're going to do about it. That's a whole other conversation. But the point being is that they have high volume. That's a scaling factor to think about. But at the same time, you can also go out and get grant funding in Lakewood as well, for instance, for something like this. But you've also got a budget that has potentially more latitude for IT work than a small jurisdiction may have for IT work. But the general answer is affordability. Yeah, all day long. That is something that is very top of mind for us, because our philosophy is don't leave anybody behind. We want to make sure that every jurisdiction has access to this type of capability, that the price points meet what those jurisdictions would be operating in as a normal course of business. And also what's very important with that as well is that I was just in San Francisco. I'm at the what's called the global thought leader for remote regional and rural communities for the Smart Cities Council out of Australia and Washington. And I was just speaking at a summit in San Francisco 2-3 weeks ago. And we were talking about this and the fact that right now we have a little bit of an urbanization dilemma going on, where people are leaving a lot of the rural areas and moving into the larger urban and suburban areas because of access to healthcare, education, employment, those types of things. When you're able to bring cities of platform technology out into the rural areas or more rural areas, now you've actually started to light up more capabilities to interconnect schools, to actually bring education, to bring telehealth, to bring all these things out into those communities. And the government is an excellent vehicle to enable a lot of that, because I got to tell you, this is not top of mind for wireless operators like Viera Wireless out there on the plains. It's not top of mind for them. They're putting up towers and doing 5G. It's not top of mind to go out and provide educational access for people. So how do we, it's not top of mind for Starlink to do something like that. They're providing the tunnel and the pipe, but government has the capability to attract and bring in those different things. So if you want to bring in employment opportunities, one of the very first things that they're going to do if you want to go through and put together a brand new energy industry into your rural area, what's going to bring them in? Incentives. What's going to bring those incentives in? Access. That access is all about connectivity as well. So as soon as you can start bringing those things together, and technology is a big enabler in growth opportunities for those smaller jurisdictions, city as a platform becomes a key foundation component for lighting that whole thing up. That's a really long answer for that question. I'm sorry.
I like it though. Well, and I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or anyone raising their hand, so I will go ahead and put the link to our website in the chat there. And you know where to find us. Please don't hesitate to contact any of us if you have any follow-up questions, you want to learn more, you want to get a quote just to see what it might cost you to try some little piece or part of this to get going on your journey. We do have some upcoming webinar Wednesdays, so please save the dates to join us on July 16th with Tech Systems and July 30th with Top Talent Learning, two of our new ones that have come on board. If you haven't heard, registration is open for our 13th annual user conference, which will be held on Thursday, September 4th at Empower Field at Mile High. We're really excited about this one. We're putting together an agenda of topics that survey respondents have said they wanted covered, and we've got an exciting day planned for you, so we hope to see you there. You'll find these links to register for any of these events and more information on our website. Be sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter to keep up with what's going on, what we've got available, and any other services we can help you procure, because we're here to help you. If you want to return to this webinar or view it again, or share it with a colleague, we'll be getting this processed and uploaded to YouTube, so be on the lookout for that. And don't forget to do that survey that we'll be sending out here at the end, because we really do want to keep making these relevant for you, and we would love to know what your feedback is. So that's it from us today. We hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.